Cool. All right. Welcome everyone to season 3, episode 16. This one is called Scores Galore. Let's get straight into it. Next. Sweet. A quick thing on the agenda. We're going to add in a quick Q&A session. So as you've got questions throughout the slide, drop it in and we'll take some time at the end to address it directly. So overview for this week, or well, last week. We managed to get scaling of custom score strips, so hopefully this will now allow us to ship scores at higher velocity, which I'm personally really excited for because we've got some very exciting ones in the mix, and I'm personally really looking forward to seeing some of my scores. And then we managed to solidify a bunch of the work for the roadmap in December, which is great because we've managed to get like a bit of lead time on engineering. Yeah, sweet. And then we are starting on the formal spec definition for the borrowing platform. So the borrowing platform is like as kind of thematically something that I'm thinking about a lot more. And there's, I guess, kind of a few components of it. The first is like, how do we plan what we want to achieve from it? B, how do we make sure the incentive structures and the kind of holistic design works? And then 3 is like making sure we start scoping out the work that needs to be done, getting through timelines and all of that. So I'm just kind of like a lot of my headspace is now focused in on that. And then I went on a survival course end of last week. So I was offline like kind of from Friday to Monday, which basically ties into my shout out to basically the entire team. I had like no internet for 4 days and I was like, is everything going to be okay? Is everything going to be okay? And then I checked my phone. And on like Monday and everything was fine. So just massive shout out to the team. It's really amazing to see everything work as expected. So that's my shout out. And then in terms of this week, literally, yeah, working through the spec of the borrow platform and like how we kind of bootstrap certain aspects. And there's like an element of like tokenomics that like is going to kind of seep in here. And it's going to be really interesting what we're cooking up. So I'm just trying to like make sure the incentives kind of stack up, speaking with a bunch of people. But yeah, this is something that's going to be really, really cool when it shines. And then the second bit is continued work on the ARC. So the ARC is basically our public wiki plus the roadmap. And we kind of envision it as like, if you're completely brand new to ARC and you want to sit down for an hour and understand where we came from, what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing, our values, team, etc. This is the single place that has it. I'm not going to commit to an ETA for it just yet, since we have quite a lot we want to share. Like, it's almost a year and a half's worth of work and history kind of being condensed into one place. But as soon as we get higher resolution on that, that will be made public. We are working on it, but there's just quite a lot to get through. And then the other thing is like, thinking through how we might make passports transferable. So like if you change wallets or things like that, how do we make that more easier? And it sounds simple, but there's a lot of implications. Like, we're conceptually a primitive company, and the primitive that we make is reputation. And like, this is kind of touching on how should reputation as a primitive really work. And that's what there's a lot of very meta things you need to think through when making that right. But that's like another kind of background thing that is kind of running on in my mind, but there's nothing solid on it just yet. So that's kind of like this week. And the challenge, which I'm really thinking through, is how we get the incentive structure for liquidity in the borrowing system. We've got some interesting variables, but it's just playing around with them, getting feedback, and then making sure it all stacks up. So that's it on my end. I'll pass it on to engineering now.
All right, thank you, Kerman. So regarding engineering, last week was very intensive on the database side, on the backend side, and in that we completed the integration with the database on our backend. This was a huge change. So which means essentially we can now pump scores much faster and and provide better UX with slower loading times on the app. And also we started working on an ARCx bot that should be coming by the that should be ready to go by the end of this week, but which actually ties in the next point. This week we want to, like I said, we want to deliver the ARCx bot. We'll see where that bot is first gonna be added. That is to be announced. Also, we want to bring the hyper accessible passports, or at least get that into the testing phase, which essentially means bring gasless passports to our users. And finally, we'll add a chain selector in our app as well. And I want to do a shout out to the entire engineering team for delivering the database upgrade without without breaking anything. This, on the surface, it doesn't seem like much, but this was indeed a huge change. Like I said, it was a big uplift. So kudos on that. And finally, challenges, finding a full-time designer. This is because we have many things planned on the roadmap that are currently blocked by designs. So yeah, we're still looking to hire. And that's it for engineering. I'm going to pass it on to Kale for the data side.
Awesome. Thank you, GT. GM. So what's going on in the data world? So for us at the moment, the big focal point is around distribution and trying to distribute both through custom scores and through the analytics newsletter. So that's where the really big focus is for us. It's an easy way for us to move the needle. It's an easy way for us to get our ARCx name out there. So last week, we had our first release of the analytics newsletter. That was a really big milestone. As with everything, the first time you do something, it's the most difficult, and then it becomes subsequently easier from there. That was very cool. By the way, still collecting feedback on that. If you have anything you want to say about it, feel free to drop it in the Discord somewhere or message me or Hugh and just say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Very much appreciated. We had 2 more custom scores kind of pushed through the pipeline and are ready for release. So hopefully some of that stuff will materialize soon with Liam. And the other things we were working on last week was data warehouse refactor and scaling ETL systems. On that scaling point, we were pulling all this data and we were hitting timeout limits for the services we were using of having 9 minutes and I think more than 8 gigabytes or something or other what we were using. So I put Stuart on top of that and he's working on scaling it out and making sure it works in the future nicely. So that's what we were working on. And that's for the most part completed. I think there's one little push to production and then it's done. For this week, second edition of the analytics newsletter, we're just going to keep focusing on that, keep releasing new versions of this newsletter and refining that process. Wanted to make it super streamlined, which I talk about in the challenges. And then other things is continue custom scores work, just more and more scores, want to get them all together, and then continue data warehouse refactor. So all of this stuff is really just preparing and solidifying and getting the distribution right for the next big push, which Kerman's mentioned, which is around Borrow and thinking about that more. Shout outs, Liam, thank you for all your discussions with different protocols and partners. I know you're, pushing away in the background and making all these conversations happen. I appreciate it because I see how many custom scores Stuart and I need to build. So that's very nice. Kyle, big one on scaling the infrastructure. We're talking about going from being able to publish a few thousand to a few million kind of thing. So not a small improvement in performance. And then Stuart, the last one is Stuart. Stuart and Liam have a really nice workflow together where they both work on custom scores and producing new custom scores. And the best thing in the world is the problem where Liam cannot give enough work to Stuart because he produces work too quickly. So big shout out to Stuart. Liam and I will often ask Stuart to do something the morning of, and he's done by the afternoon of. That guy's just a machine. So big shout out to him. Challenges. One of the really big challenges is translating the business squad's vision into code and execution. That's a recurring theme I'm noticing in the data squad is that, there's this grand vision for the newsletter and this grand vision for these custom scores. And sometimes we just miss the mark on that. We just can't quite figure out how to translate them. That's a challenge we're working through. And the other thing, which I hinted at before, is pipelining. Custom scores and analytics content takes a lot of time. It is hard work. There's a reason why there's data experts who do it. So trying to figure out how do we automate that and how do we pipeline that so it doesn't become, my job is to turn up and make analytics content, but that's just a small subset of our work. I mean, keep working on these more strategic long-term projects that add a lot of value. They're kind of the challenges we're working through. That's my update. So Liam, you're next up on business development.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Kale. So last week, thematically I've been interviewing community members, so just talking to as many people out in the world as possible. And sort of, I talk to a lot of people, but I'm also trying to, in some instances now, formalize my conversations with people to sort of get insights and things about, you know, the perceptions of people outside of, you know, the team and that are using the product, that are in the community. So I talked to more than 3 people last week, but 3 sort of formal interviews where I'm kind of taking notes and understanding. And, you know, if you're on the call right now, listening from the community, you know, I'd really encourage you to just send me a friend request or, you know, mention me in any of the channels if you do want to have a chat and share any thoughts and insights that you have. It's super valuable for us, and we are absolutely all ears to understand what it is that, you know, your perspectives are around what we're doing. If you have suggestions, we want to hear them. So in any way that you want to hear that, you know, I really want to emphasize that, whether you're on YouTube listening or whether you're in the Discord, we want to talk to you if you have ideas and thoughts around what we're doing. So I think that sort of is the first thing I want to highlight there. And then also, as Kale mentioned, Stuart and I are sort of, you know, sort of thick as thieves at this stage in terms of how we're working together. So last week, you know, we defined 3 new scores, tested 2 new ones, and then there was a bit of a spanner in the works that was not a bad problem to have, but we had 2 other projects actually proactively reach out to us saying, hey, you know, we think that there's an opportunity to potentially work with you guys for some scores and using the passport. So, you know, I need to actually put a retrospective shout out to Stuart in here and with Kale as well, because I hadn't anticipated we'd have inbounds yet. So, you know, those sort of mess up the flow a bit because you want to get back to them and keep the conversation flowing. So, yeah, Kale and Stuart have been really helpful for that. So this week, I've got more community interviews, and I sort of want to be a little less private with the scores that we're sort of just doing outbound. So to sort of share the sort of scores we're working on. So, you know, we're testing a Klima score, an Olympus score, and a Chainlink score. So once again, if you're listening, come into the Discord. I'll send you a private link. You can test this thing out because we want to make sure it works for all users. This week, I'll also be releasing an ENS airdrop score. So that'll be going out around this time tomorrow. You can actually already test that. And, you know, I've got links in the Discord, but feel free to jump in mention me, and I'll get you on all the new scores if you're interested as well. I'm continuing to service the 2 inbound opportunities that we have, and just figuring out, you know, how we can get those working. So that's new for us. So some things there that we're just ironing out, you know, in terms of how we help people that are coming to us. And then I'm going to define a Uniswap airdrop score, a Ribbon airdrop score as well this week. And, you know, if you're listening to this, you know, drop a comment in YouTube, drop a comment in the community call chat if you can think of any scores you'd like us to do as well. So then I want to do a shout out to Kyle. So Kyle has scaled with the broader team as well, but I know, you know, Kyle's my point of contact, so he's kind of absorbing all the credit. I don't know if he's got an army underneath him, but Kyle's managed to work himself to the top of the pyramid, so he's going to collect all of the clout. So essentially what Kyle's managed to do is we can now handle scores that have like probably hundreds of thousands of addresses. Before that was really slowing the website down, so we couldn't ship scores like Olympus or Chainlink or Klima, but now we can. So that's fantastic. And then, so shout out to Kyle. Thank you very much. It's so good. Unblocks a lot. And then challenges, scaling scores in a permissionless manner. So what I mean by this is, at the moment, you know, I'm working with a project and saying, hey, you know, love for you to support us on social media and, you know, sort of warming that up. I'm trying to figure out a way for us to sort of do it in a way where it's, you know, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, in the sense of like, we've got a score, we ship it, or we build up some buzz in their Discord, we ship it, and then they give us a retweet and we can get that distribution through to their community. That's something that still, I mean, I wouldn't say it keeps me up at night, but it's something that hasn't been figured out that I know is crucial. So that's number one problem. I'm also giving input to Kerman around like the borrow spec, giving him sort of the perspectives of community around, you know, how should the borrow experience work? And then I'm also going to feed in some views on how we improve user onboarding and privacy assurance and things like that as well. But that's everything from me. Thank you very much. And I think it's on to Hugh now.
GM, yeah. Hey everybody. Okay, cool. So quick update from Ops. Few things happened that have already been spoken about. Last week, published first edition of that newsletter. Just to recap of like why we're doing this newsletter is it's important to kind of like appreciate that we have like a strong hypothesis around a future product that we want to produce, and this newsletter is like helping us to de-risk and understand how we can design that feature or that product in a way that's going to provide a lot of value. So I wanted to just say thank you to all the people that have read that newsletter and then have provided feedback. That's actually been really, really helpful. So the next version of that will be coming out in the next day. And yeah, I would love to kind of continue that feedback cycle, and so that we can make those edits and changes and provide value. The other things that we did last week were just spend a bit of time in the backlog defining various features for the roadmap. As mentioned, also continuing the recruitment efforts for our lead designer. And then we have like a team retreat, so spend a bit of time planning for that. That was really last week. This week, supporting the definition of borrow. That's coming. That's like a lot of people providing input into that. I think it's a really big feature that needs a lot of thinking. As Kim mentioned, also, we want to finalize or at least get to the next iteration of the ARC. So the ARC is that, the combination of a public roadmap, a jobs portal, and a wiki doc. So the goal will be to almost like eventually deprecate the Gitbooks and then host all of that information on the ARC. And then beyond that, the newsletter, as I mentioned, the second one, and then finally getting some like bookings for our team retreat. Just wanted to shout out like one. I mean, my shout out's pretty lame, but we got a foster cat, so this like cat has been like an emotional support for me as I manage my time my very scarce time in the last week of my full-time job. And then that kind of leads on to my challenges. As I said, like this is the last week that I have here, doing kind of like multiple roles. So beyond this week is going to be, I'll be way more free to devote to ARCx. So that's it from Ops.
That marks the end of this community call. Next week, we might be hosting this a bit earlier, but we'll confirm any changes to the times. But until then, thank you for tuning in, everyone, and catch you all next week. Bye.